Hello and welcome back. I'm John Stock from MacTheMovieGuy.com. It's spooky season and this is Christine. Yes. Yes. You always gotta do a John Carpenter movie for Halloween movies. This is my spooky season. I'm still playing with flashlights. I baked my entire thing on flashlights and on doing something cool with. I have no idea what this looks like on video. That's the thing about being a blind film critic is like conceptually you're like, you know what? Visually this might look really cool, like the idea of holding the flashlight up, telling ghost stories. That's what I'm going for. I've pre-recorded all this shit, so all my reviews are gonna be like this. It's either gonna, no one's either gonna watch my channel in October or everyone's gonna watch my channel. I have no idea how it's gonna happen, but this is Christine. It's it's a film from 1983, so it's 41 years old. 41 years old. 41 years old. And it's the same age as me. So that's easy for me to remember that. It's directed by John Carpenter, based on the book by Stephen King. Although it's really debatable which came first, the chicken or the egg. There's a very interesting story here, and that is the fact that this movie, the book came out in April and the movie came out in December. Now, for anybody who understands film production, that's a very, very short turnaround. Even for somebody like John Carpenter, who, coming off of Halloween, he's used to kind of making things, independent, without a lot of, that's still with no pre-production. Like, if you're literally waiting for the book to drop and then be like, oh my God, the book is amazing. Let's greenlight the movie. Let's have somebody write no. Somebody had the book in advance. Somebody knew this book was being written, and somebody was writing a script for this film. Like, somebody was probably sitting next to Stephen King and be like, "What do you got over there? What do you got? What you got going on over there?" Because I don't think there's a way. I don't think there's a way possible for them to have seen the reaction, like, to release the book and been like, "Huh, Stephen King dropped a new book. Why don't we make this a movie? Let's see if we can get it out by December." Who we got to write this thing? I mean, to go through the scripting process, the casting process, pre-production, production, post-production, everything, and get the movie out by December just seems like a really impossible task unless you knew the book was coming. So, almost like one of those Lost World scenarios, like with Michael Crichton, where Michael Crichton wrote the book, but this isn't a sequel to anything, so I don't know how they were involved. I don't know, maybe he wrote the book and they sat on it for a little bit and then released it, but somebody definitely had some prior knowledge about Christine, because I just don't believe that they greenlit this based on reception to the book. They were just like, oh, well, anything Stephen King makes, we're just going to turn into a movie at this point. So, yeah, it's the Killer Car movie. In case you forgot which one Christine was, it's the Killer Car movie. A young man who feels like he's not quite getting what he needs out of his high school career. Decides what he needs in life is a car. So he goes out and he buys a Plymouth Fury. And man, does that Plymouth Fury change his life. I love that it's a Plymouth Fury too, and not like, I don't know, something more obvious. But these, just sort of like a random car. And it's trash at first. It's kind of like a garbage car, and he has to fix it up and put it back together and show it all that TLC. Well, Christine likes it when you give it TLC, because Christine is sentient and has a life of her own, and as you will see as the movie progresses, and things get increasingly bonkers. We also have in the main other than the main kid, there's Dennis, who is like the best friend character that is sort of investigating and trying to save. He's essentially the hero of the story because as the film progresses, the main kid, I don't know, it's like Alfie or something like that. I can't remember what his name is. Alan or Alvin or asshole. I don't know, something. Uh, he keeps his personality keeps getting like worse and worse. Stephen King often plays a lot with I like themes of addiction, and you can find that actually in Christine pretty heavily, because like the more that asshole becomes attached, like that is the name for him, to his car, the more uh you know he starts taking on these personality traits and changing as a person and becoming more and more unrecognizable. And Dennis is like fighting for his friend and trying to save his friend from this thing that he is clearly obsessed over. But will he? Can he? Time will tell. In as the film progresses, there's also, the main female lead is this object of affection, and it's the '80s, so don't expect don't. I love to do the Bechdel test on I love just on the representation in this film. Uh, I mean, she gets like final girl points. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, there are moments here where she's a strong final girl. I don't know. I haven't read the book, so I don't know what the comparison is from book to screen. But yeah, she definitely gets final girl points in terms of her ability to sort of like survive Christine and like move into positions so that the car can't get her and stay out of its way. But yeah, Christine is definitely sentient and like finds interesting ways of proving that and killing people and leaving bodies behind. And my favorite part was because the kid's not popular. Who owns the car? Asshole's not popular. I'm gonna keep going with that as a name because it's not his name, but I feel like it's such a great name for this kid. And he, there's this group that they trash his car. He's out with his girlfriend, who she goes through this experience. And she's like, I'm not getting in that car. It's that car is something's up with that car. You know. And it gets trashed, and I think the kids like shit on the car or something like that, and lo and behold, that's when we sort of notice that Christine's like, I've had enough. I'm just gonna reveal to everybody my life plan here and just murder. And yeah, so then this cop comes up and he's like, where were you? I see you're cleaning up the car. I heard things went, your car, somebody took a shit in your car. How did that make you feel? And he's like, well, like, I cleaned it up. And he's like, oh, I'm just asking because one of the boys, we found that he was cut in half. They had to scrape him up with a shovel. And isn't that what you do with shit? And I was like, oh man. Ugh. Such a great exchange of dialogue happening in this film. No, but that's kind of like the thing here is it's kind of cheesy, but it knows it's cheesy. It's got and John Carpenter has the right tone for this. I gotta say, like, he knows what he's doing. I mean, this is the guy, he's already done Halloween. And he's easily recognized as being one of the horror masters. And he's taken on a Stephen King novel about an evil car. And by God, he's going to make the best evil car movie that you've ever seen. Which is really funny because later on, Stephen King, the one film he directs is about evil cars, evil trucks with maximum overdrive. So I don't know, maybe there's some sort of obsession here about like cars that attack people, but I think John Carpenter does a really good job here. I was surprised. I'd always sort of like, sniggered at the idea of Christine. Last, I definitely wasn't going to get out of this spooky season without doing a Stephen King adaptation. And then when I realized there was a Stephen King adaptation that also had John Carpenter as the director, I was like, well, duh, it's got to be Christine. Like, I mean, I can get like a horror director classic, like, make sure he gets in the mix. Plus, I can get another Stephen King review out of the mix. Like, everything it just totally makes sense. Like, this is exactly the perfect film. Got to make sure I get this in for this spooky season. So, last year I did Cujo, and that is not a scary movie. It's not a scary movie. We also had the Pet Cemetery movies because that was when they released Pet Cemetery Bloodlines. So I did Pet Cemetery 1, 2, and the remake. And that was fun. And Judd with his voice. And I always remember how Judd's voice and how he spoke. And just such a weird voice. I kind of wish I could speak like Judd. I just want to be able to speak like that all the time. And say, I'm going to go down the track right now and say, just walk around speaking like Judd. No, Cujo's just it's just not a good film. I like this. I did. I mean, it's got some tropes, but I think John Carpenter really pulls it off for the most part. I'll say that. I think this is where when you finally hook up with talent as a director, you actually see that talent and it comes through in John Carpenter's direction. What I always love about John Carpenter too is that he also writes his own scores. Now, I am going to ding him on this because I would say this score is a little reminiscent of Halloween. There were some moments in there where I was like, well, that sounds a little too close to Halloween, John. A little too close to Halloween. Could we move it away? But he did the score to the Firestarter remake, which I don't think a lot of people know because everybody just was so busy shitting on Zac Efron. But when you actually break down and listen to the score of the film, it's like that's a good score. Like John Carpenter still writes really good scores. So it's sort of like this underappreciated thing. I don't think he's ever been nominated for it. I think because of the kinds of films he writes scores for, we've managed to just sort of like slide him out of consideration. But I like what he does. Yeah, there are a couple moments in here where you can kind of hear Halloween, and you're like, are you? It wasn't like yesterday, and it was like 5 years ago for him in this. So it's like you don't need to pay homage to the thing that you did 5 years ago. So, but I don't know. I don't know what the choices were. So, but there are times when it's not like Halloween. It's just a great score. So, yeah, I think this film benefits a lot from John Carpenter's direction. He understands timing, he understands characters, he understands how to make even a silly scene with this car feel scary and legit. He understands the violence and the gore, and he understands how to build tension. There's a lot that John Carpenter really knows how to do. I've enjoyed most of his films. I think later on in life, a couple of them are stumbles. Um, I've seen Ghosts of Mars before, and I don't know that I ever need to re-see that again. I saw it when it came out. I just there was nothing about that film that made me go, oh, I need to see this again. But it's funny because I don't think I'd seen a lot of John Carpenter at the time. But now that I've seen more John Carpenter, it's like I want to watch the rest of John Carpenter and then go back and watch Ghosts of Mars and then be like, is this just the one shitty film? Like this, because that film didn't work for me at all. But I like this. I like Christine. I like what he does here. So, uh, the audio description on this is fucking great. This is a fucking great audio description track. First of all, it's just the way that it's written. Uh, it's just, I was like, oh my God, like, I love you. Whoever wrote this, I love you. That is my official, that's my review. I love you. Um, the descriptions of Christine and the personification, like the little things about how the card takes on sort of like facial expressions, all of that is in the audio description, and I love that about this. Like, I love how it directly correlates how certain shots make it look like the car is smiling or grinning or is angry, and the headlights look like eyes. Um, and just there are so many scenes where it directly references the look of the car, and like it has a face, like it's putting on a facial expression. Like there's a shot and everything where you can see it, and I think that it's so effective in terms of this. I even love like some of like the really specific scenes. There's the character that works at the junkyard, and there's one time when he's trying to get in the car, and he's trying to get past like the steering wheel or whatever, and the the I can't remember exactly how the track said it, but it was like his sizable girth or whatever. He's he tries to scoot past this steering wheel with his sizable girth, and I was like, so he's fat. Thank you for finding a way of doing it in like the most polite way possible, and being like, well, there's a fat man trying to get it. I'm fat. I'm 3. I have a 3 in front of my weight. This is language I can use without being offensive. So, I mean, I get the struggle of what this guy's going through, and at the same time, I appreciated the approach to using like the certain kind of language and how this person gets in the car. Yeah, I thought Christine was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. It's not great. It's still a killer car, but I mean, I find Maximum Overdrive to be cheesy fun too. I don't. Yeah, I don't. The thing is, you have to know what you are, and somebody has to know, and that person directing has to know what you are as a concept, and know what to do with you. And sometimes we get these concepts, we get these films, franchises where people just don't know. They have no idea what to do, and the film just flops. And it can be anything. It not just a horror movie, but a comic book franchise, adaptation of a novel that the person didn't really read, that the director is doing. They didn't really get why it was popular to begin with. And we see this all the time. And that's kind of what causes a movie to flop. Here, I think John Carpenter fully understood conceptually the book. I think he understood what could make Christine scary. And I think he did his best job to do it. Is it Halloween? Nah, it's not as good as his little independent feature. But man, this is a lot better. I was assuming this was going to be hot garbage my whole life. I've just been like, oh my God, Chris, how can you do this? But they did it, I would argue he did it. I would argue that John Carpenter pulled it off. I wonder how scary the book is, but I would argue that John Carpenter made a good film here. It's not the best. It's not the best Stephen King adaptation. It's really hard to pull that off when you got stuff like Stanley Kubrick doing, The Shining, and Brian De Palma doing Carrie. I mean, like, those are just 2 bangers right there. The Andy Muschietti and his It Chapter 1 and It Chapter 2 were both exceptional films. So no, John Carpenter's Christine is not in like the top echelon. Of course, Shawshank Redemption, Green Mile, stuff like that too. always kind of forget those are like Stephen King novels because they're played completely differently than like a scary movie. They just have like horror elements to them. But I think Christine, especially considering last year I had to sit through all the Pet Sematary movies, and which are not terrible, but varying levels. That needed a better director as a franchise. Um, and Cujo, which just did not work for me on any level whatsoever. I thought that was just a really poorly directed film and wasn't scary at all. Um, so yeah, Christine, I'm gonna give Christine a B. Uh, I think I think it's good. There's something here about I heard while doing like a little bit of passing reference, films dedicated to George Romero, and which is so cool because it is I think Christine as a book is dedicated, but it takes place in 1978, which is when Dawn of the Dead took place, as a nod to Romero and in that culture. But it's nice that one horror master giving a nod to another horror master, I think is really cool. So I'd love to find out, now that Wes Craven has passed, how many people have since dedicated things to Wes Craven, because I feel like he should be somebody who was influential for a lot of these newer directors. Somebody like Ari Aster, for example, I feel like should have looked at Wes Craven at some time in his life and been like, yeah, I would dedicate something. And I'd take a nod to Wes Craven. But that's it. That's my spooky season. Christine. Anyway, if you see a Plymouth Fury coming for you down the road, run. Actually, if you see a Plymouth Fury at all, I'll probably try to buy it. It's probably worth a lot of money at this point. I don't think those are really on the road anymore. So you should be fascinated by it. And if you're blind and you can see a Plymouth Fury on the road, well then, I don't know. Magic has happened. So, that's it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I will see you guys on the other side.